Hi, welcome to my first ever book review. I'm Paige and this is my channel Rolling with Paige. I post a lot of random shit on here, but lately my goal has been reading and I've been wanting an excuse to read more, and ask and you shall receive. I'm now officially a part of 2 different book clubs and a challenge. And one of the book clubs is PewDiePie's book club that he's just started. This is going to be my first book review video. It's Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, the first book of 3 in the Mistborn trilogy. It's a fantasy novel. It's fucking good. I'm going to give you an overall rundown of the book without too many spoilers, and then I'm going to jump into the deep shit in a bit, okay? The book is set in a dystopian world led by the Lord Ruler, who is an immortal, all-powerful being. Some think of him as a god, and under him are the noblemen, who the story goes that the Lord Ruler gave these noblemen ancestors powers centuries ago as a reward from a battle that they were in. And the noblemen are in charge of and are ruling over the Scar, who are a large group of slaves. The Scar are constantly beaten, raped and murdered just for funsies. At best, they are the servants in the noblemen's households and are treated a little bit better. They usually have grueling tasks like tending to the crops that are impossible to grow in the harsh environment because there's always ash falling from the sky for some reason. And then at night time they are too scared to leave their dwellings because of the mists, because they think they're either gonna die from them or be turned into some creature. The noblemen and women spend their days like royalty, waited on hand and foot by the Scar, and spend most of their nights attending fancy ass balls, dancing and eating. A lot of the noblemen are in charge of trade and the function of the cities, and there's like a few different noble households in this big city that we're based in. There are a few groups of Scar rebels and thieving groups, kind of like pirates, who are either trying to fight back against the noblemen or just trying to straight up rob them, which is where we meet Vin, our protagonist of the story. The magic system is an interesting one. It's very detailed and very specific, which I'll explain in a bit, but honestly it had its ups and downs, because although it was very specific and you could see the practical uses, the way he sort of described it at first was very confusing. He sort of used a battle scene to start to describe the complex magic and how each element works and how it's used and everything while things were happening, and it sort of took away from the initial fight scene. Like, I would have preferred if he had a massive fight scene and all this shit was happening and then you were like, what is going on? And then he has the training scene with Vin, and if he'd left all the technicality stuff to that, the way he did it it made the scenes very confusing. I had to read them multiple times and I sort of couldn't wrap my head around what was actually happening, and it just made me kind of confused. It got to the point where I would just sort of skip over the fight scenes a little bit instead of trying to figure out each and every little thing that was happening, because it was a bit much. But if I imagined it to be like an anime fighting scene, then it was way easier to visualize, because it was just like, this guy jumped on this person's chest and then he rebounded into the air and like all this stuff. But yeah, that made it easier. Now let me explain a general gist of the magic. There are 2 kinds of magic people. There are Mistborns and Mistlings. Mistborns are basically the descendants of these people who helped the Lord Ruler back in the day, usually noblemen, who can eat some metal, but they have to be specific metals, and they can use all 10 of the powers from all 10 of the metals. Then there's Mistlings, who can only use one of those, right? So they might have a specific power. In their gang of misfits, they sort of have one of each power or element in their team, plus 1 or 2 Mistborns. All of this is sort of genetic, and not all genetics are equal, and that's why it is forbidden for noblemen to get with Scar, because they don't want their powers to be passed down. So that leads to the noblemen taking young beautiful Scar women and keeping them for like a month or so to play with and then killing them, which is lovely. But obviously some people slip through the cracks. That's how we get our gang that we're affiliated with, Gang for Life. Before moving on to the nitty gritty, which I'm going to get to, and there will be spoilers, I want to talk about my reading journey personally. I've always struggled with reading. I often jumble words up in my head, and reading out loud is really difficult for me. But worse than all of that, for some reason, my brain is trained to read and pass out. So I have a Kobo and it tells me the average reading time per session. I couldn't get past 5 to 6 minutes. Okay, I would fall asleep. I had to set alarms on my phone every 5 minutes to make sure I'd wake up. I'd like feel myself dozing off and I had to like shake myself awake while I'm reading, and like that honestly was so frustrating, and probably the most challenging part about getting through this book was retraining my brain to not fall asleep the second I start reading. But I have been getting better, so the training has been paying off, okay? Okay, I'm gonna start with the spoilers now. Let's start with Vin. I really like her character arc and her identity battle. She's gone from Vin, this little thieving scar in a gang who beat her just as much as the noblemans would, but she's with them for protection because, I mean, what other choice is there? It's be a prostitute or be a fucking slave, so she might as well be in this gang who still treat her like shit. Then she gets scooped up by Kelsier and his gang and taken to this castle, this mansion of a place, to become Valette, the niece of a nobleman from another town, come in to sort of learn the ways of the balls and see what it's like in the big city, and she really pulls it off. And then she gets confused about her identity. Who am I? Am I Valette? I really like this actually, being treated awesome and getting everything I want. Sick. Discovers that she's not either of these people. These have both been acts this whole time, just doing what she needs to do to survive. It was also really satisfying to see her become stronger and more equipped in battles. She is a Mistborn. She is obviously, as the main character always is, special in some ways. She's picking up things faster. She seems to be stronger than a lot of the other Mistborns and Mistlings. But I'm also glad that it wasn't just straight in your face like she's superpower. Like she earns it, she builds it, she's constantly practicing her gifts. You can see her progression with that, which is awesome. And what happens right at the end with the mists and her powers, I'm really excited for the next few books to see what is actually happening. Who is she and what powers does she have? Kelsier! I adored his character. He came into the story as this crazy, flamboyant and fair leader with a little dramatic flair. He really loved the attention. Throughout his story, he gave a home to Vin. He became like a father figure, introduced her into this group that's just full of trust, which is something she's never had her entire life. And eventually he showed that to the general Scar population. I like the way he was both portrayed as a revolutionary and a savior to these people, but also showed very human characteristics. Like, he loved to assassinate the enemy, like, a lot. Like, he would kill everyone, you know what I mean? And he couldn't see past his own loss and betrayal to accept that some people aren't just traitors, they're just doing what they need to do to survive. Some people don't have much of a choice like he did, despite what he thinks. Seeing him transform from a leader to a savior to a god, finally being immortalized in the minds of his followers, was very interesting to me, and it really made me think about real life religions and what the past might have been like and what actually happened, and how these stories are made up or put onto this person. But from Vin's perspective, he was just Kel. Like, why are these people thinking this about? Why are they worshipping Kel? He's not a god. He's taken this way too far. He's just regular, you know? And like, it really makes me think about actual religion and also how people idolize others as well, like celebrities and things like that. In the end, he really gave the people what they needed, which was hope, belief, and a reason to fight, which a lot of them had lost. Sazed! The Keeper! He is capable of storing memory into metals, amongst other things. He was my absolute favourite. He was constantly there for everyone. He felt like a protector to Vin and an advisor to Kel and the gang. He had a wealth of knowledge and wisdom to share at any given moment. Sorry, I'm reading off of a thing. I liked his interest in the hundreds of thousands of religions from different places and from history that he kept offering up to his friends. Like, this would be a good religion for you. What do you think? And they're like, no thanks. But it was so cute, and like when you think about what those little golden nuggets of knowledge meant to him and how powerful his people ended up actually being and what all of it meant in the bigger picture, it was just so sweet. I really liked it. And also how Kel ended up becoming this sort of god of a being in people's minds as well, like really showed the importance of what Sazed was trying to say to them this whole time. But he was my favourite. I loved him. The crew! I love the crew! They had great banter. Each person had their own story. The only critique I have on the crew is that because there was quite a few of them, I can see them all in my mind, but I can't remember each one's backstory to each character. But I really did like the use of nicknames because that helped me so much in remembering who was who and what was what. I really liked all of them and they all felt individual, which was good. Elend Adventure. I'm sure my opinion of Elend is going to be swayed because of some of the other smutty books that I read. And I'm sure he will have a character arc in the next few books because his story pretty much only started at the end of the first book. But I didn't really like him as Vin's love interest. Like, I can see how she could think that he's a nobleman standing up for the cause in his own little way and he's on their side. And I can see how him being in a powerful house might have had something to do with the everything as well. But for me, he just doesn't seem like the right person for her. I don't know, maybe it's because she's so powerful and like she's so much better at the shit that he's been doing his whole life than him. Like, she's just so good. I love her. But maybe that's just it. Maybe no one will be right for our perfect little girl, okay? I also wanted to talk about the Kandra. Kandra? These guys are fucking creepy, but I loved the reveal at the Battle of Luthor. It was fucking insane. And like, it really put together the pieces for me, like the questions I had. Like, how did they pull off taking over Keep Renox without anyone noticing? Kandra. That's how they did it. Crazy. I love it. And this is just a slight brag, but I was the only one in the book club who picked up on the fact that House Venture, their family, had a Kandra as well. The Scar woman who used to be one of the other people from another house. Picking up what I put down, she used to be, like, now she's someone else, but it's the same person. Kandra. Kandra. I'm saying it wrong, I think. Writing style and emotions. Overall, the book was a good read, despite the things I've already talked about. It was easy to follow, the story was great, it was easy to get sucked into, you know? And that was the problem. I was like, I must know what's happening. And then I'd fall asleep. And the pacing was good. My only critique of the pacing, again, is some of the fight scenes being over-explained. Even when time was moving forward and there was time jumps, like roughly the first half of the book was over a couple months and then the second half of the book was over the rest of the year. But it was easy to keep up with the time jumps. The only thing I did notice was she hadn't talked to Elend for a while during the time jump, and I'm like, oh, well, obviously something important was supposed to happen, but there was a time jump, so we put that on pause. Like, I could kind of tell. But besides that, it was easy to follow. As for the emotional side of things, my god, did I feel the feelings throughout the entire book. From the random stories of the Scar, to the backstories of the crew, to Vin's story, and oh my god, Kelsier. But even like Vin's accomplishments and the triumph, even when they lost the army, like I felt that too, man. Like, feelings be real in this book. Even though it was sad and shocking what happened at the very end of the book at the Battle of Luthor, I wasn't overly heartbroken, and I don't know if that's a testament to the writing, because even though I was sad and like it was unexpected, I sort of saw it coming as Kelsier becoming a martyr to the people. I don't know if it's because it was written through Kelsier that I felt a sense of peace with the death. He dies, okay? Spoilers. It was a complex emotion, so I think that's like a really good testament to how it was written and the storytelling. Chef's kiss. My rating and final thoughts. I give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I did really enjoy it. The story, the characters, the details in the world. The questions still to be answered, like, what's the shadow thing? Will Vin basically become another Lord Ruler? Or someone else, maybe? I feel like there's this whole thing with this dark shadow creature from centuries ago that is still lurking around. Like, I feel like that's what we're going to find about next. What is that? Is it still here? I have a feeling that's where all the ash is coming from. They're doing something to either feed it or keep it at bay, and I think it has something to do with the atium. I don't think there's some secret stash. I think they're using it. I think everyone has like a amount that they need to give as a tax for a reason, you know what I mean? And like, now what are they gonna do? That shit's fucked. Kelsier destroyed all of it. What are they gonna do? There's so many questions. The only problem is, because I've dedicated myself to so many other books, I don't know how long it's going to be until I can read the second one. So I guess stay tuned for that, but don't hold your breath. Thanks for watching.